Good morning. This is Dwayne Mosier and Callie. We're out taking our walk along the Schuylkill River. It's just before 6 o'clock. It's still pretty dark out here. You know, walking in the dark is difficult. It's got to pay attention to where you're walking. If there's anything in front of you, if you're going to stumble. Sort of reminds me of when I wake up in the middle of the night and need to get up, try to make your way in the dark. I sometimes find that I think I'm at one place in the room and I'm actually in a totally different place. I'm have sort of gone off course because I can't see where I'm going. And on Easter morning, we like to have those sunrise services. Well, not everybody likes to have those sunrise services because you got to get up out of bed early and wake up before the sun's up. And we sometimes have trouble doing that. But we do it because our story. And after his crucifixion by the governing powers of his day who didn't want to hear his message, executed him on a cross. And the women are making their way in the dark trying to get to the tomb. They don't really know where they're going that day in the dark. The story doesn't tell us much about the details of their journey along that path in the dark. It doesn't tell us if they bumped into any stones or trees or what they could see or couldn't see. But it does tell us that they're going there in the darkness in their lives after everything had changed in the last week. Changed from being able to hear a message from Jesus, a message of love that gave them hope for the future, a message that gave them reason that they were people who mattered not only to Jesus but to God, that they were people who had value and worth. And now everything had been turned around on them, and they were making their way in the dark. You know, I think we read the story, and it reminds us that darkness is also symbolic. Darkness in our lives, the darkness going on in the world around us, the darkness of our struggles. That darkness is still all around us. We still live in a world where way too many people are hungry and starving. I'm walking along the Schuylkill path here, and I know that even here in the wealthy county of Montgomery, Pennsylvania, that up along this path there are many people sleeping in tents, camping out because they have no other place to stay. We struggle with all sorts of things in our world, and it is sort of a darkness that makes us wonder where we're going, what we have to do, and how we're going to find something that gives us hope, something that tells us that we matter. We matter to God, and we matter to one another and to each other. I love walking along this path early in the morning and watching the sun come up. It's just sort of awesome to see the world transformed from darkness into light. I know it happens every day, but I am amazed every day when I see it. And it makes me have hope that a new day is beginning, a new day is starting. I think that's the power of that Easter dawn story, as that Mary and her companions made their way through the darkness. They didn't know what the future was going to hold. They didn't know how they were going to make it through that day. They were trying their best, doing the things that they did, their rituals, their habits, their ways of managing every day, and they were on their way to the tomb to see Jesus, so they could anoint his body and they could do what they knew. Something was happening that they could not imagine, something that was going to transform the darkness of their night into a new morning. And they were going to discover that the tomb was empty. They were going to discover that Jesus' body wasn't there. When they arrived at the tomb, they did not find what they were looking for. What they discovered was a new day filled with life. Jesus was not in the tomb, but Jesus was alive. Jesus and his message of love, his message of hope, his message of compassion for every person, the stories that they remembered about Jesus reaching out to the people who had been marginalized, the people who had been rejected, the people who didn't matter, those stories were transformed. They started to think about them in light of this new day. Jesus, who had been crucified, being alive. Jesus, who the world tried to silence, was still out there, able to speak and proclaim this message of good news. You know, I believe that in our world today, we often feel like we're walking around in darkness. We hear stories of the violence in our world, war and destruction. We struggle with issues of global warming when we don't know how we're going to change our lives. We hear of mass shootings that outnumber the number of days this year, and school shootings where people break in and kill innocent children. And we wonder, how are we going to see the light? But Jesus gives us hope. The story of Jesus is a story of finding our way in the midst of darkness, finding our life in the midst of death, finding hope in the midst of despair. And so we celebrate this Easter morning, recognizing that we are walking in darkness, that we are walking in darkness seeking light, seeking the light of Christ, which will help transform not only our personal lives, but will help transform the world. So we gather this day as the sun is coming up. We will gather in our worship service and celebrate because Christ is risen. Christ is risen indeed. Hallelujah. Blessings and have an awesome day.